Hey, this is Fling with DFS Army, and this is your Week 13 Millie Maker review. We're going to see what won the Millie Maker, look at the top 10 lineups as well, dive into a little of MME strategy for top DFS pros, and just kind of look at the overall slate. So let's do it. All right, so I got the winning Millie Maker lineup pulled up here, courtesy of Fantasy Labs. This was definitely an unconventional lineup. You have a quarterback who gets a lot of his production by running, and you have him stacked with his running back. But when the team scores 42 points, as they did, these onslaught stacks are obviously going to be more viable where they can both eat. So we had, especially when the price works out. Brian Robinson Jr. was only 6,100. So the stack that we had here was a Jaden Daniels plus Brian Robinson Jr. plus Terry McLaurin stack. So QB +2 with a running back being one of them. We also had Bucky Irving. He broke the slate, 30 DK points. Had a lot of him myself. Almost had a takedown because of Bucky Irving. And it's kind of funny that he ended up being this chalky because projections certainly didn't have him for this much ownership, but I think given the spot against Carolina, the worst run defense in the league, that's why a lot of people were on Bucky here at the salary. And, even though the coaches didn't want to announce it as a starter, he's kind of just taken over that spot at 5,800. Was a great play there. Lad McConkey was chalk. This is chalk that paid off. It was a good spot. Pretty crazy that McConkey, gets there and has a great game, and Herbert fails so hard. You would think that Herbert at least would have a decent game, but he was terrible. And then I guess actually we had a Jaden Daniels +2 with a Nick Westbrook Akine bring back. This guy continues to just catch touchdowns. I don't know what it is. Like, he just has good chemistry with Levis, and he just has a knack for catching touchdowns. So the field continues to sleep on this guy, and I treat him the same way you want to treat Marcus Valdes-Scantling. Like, get a little bit of exposure to these guys in your lineups because it could just be that 5 to 10% exposure that you have that helps you win the tournament at their salary, as long as DK is not going to increase their price. And then Fryermuth here with so we had a couple of stacks actually. So we had Bucky Irving and Mike Evans as a stack. We also had Lad McConkey and Chargers D. So there's 3 stacks in this game. There's the first stack, there's a secondary stack, and a third stack. And then Pat Fryermuth was a one-off here, not stacked with any Cincinnati players. So, overall, a lot of correlation in this lineup. Really good lineup. 8 running back chalk. Didn't probably expect it to be running back chalk, but 8 running back chalk. Had McConkey and a little bit of Evans chalk. Other than that, everything was contrarian, all the way down to the defense that ended up breaking the slate because I think Kirk Cousins is done. He's cooked. I think they should play Penix. And, I just saw a stat earlier. In his last 3 games, he has 0 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. So Chargers D definitely broke the slate here. And yeah, this wasn't a 150 max or just 7 lineups that Teddy Bear 77 put in the millie. Let's take a look at second place. We had Russell Wilson to Pickens and Fryermuth. So, Russell Wilson kind of he actually was the nuts play as far as, from a value standpoint. 5,700, scored 30 points, so actually outscored Jaden Daniels. So Russell Wilson was the guy, but, when it comes to this contest specifically, we're going to take a look at some other contests. But this contest specifically, this is kind of like why the Millie Maker is, although it's winnable if you're 150 maxing, making correlated lineups as we see, it is a lottery ticket because even though Russell Wilson was the nuts lineup, you have so many combinations of players out of 147,000 lineups that Jaden Daniels lineup got into the winning Millie Maker versus Russell Wilson. And look at the difference here. It's probably just Seattle defense versus the Chargers defense, which is not a 5 points difference. So this was a Wilson, Pickens, Fryermuth lineup, no bring back. Had that Bucky Irving Evans stack, so that's looking like a stack that's going to be, one we're going to see atop of the leaderboards a lot today. Joe Mixon, Brian Thomas, Adam Thielen. I loved Thielen. I had a lot of Thielen on this slate. And my process for Thielen was anytime you get a guy that's a value play that everyone latches onto and optimal is just shoving your lineups like David Moore, you almost always want to look for direct leverage and play a similar priced player in that same offense. Or, if you like that game environment in that same offense, otherwise just kind of look for a one-to-one pivot. And that was the play here. Adam Thielen, he was about 1,300 more, but not enough that, you have to change the entire lineup, of course. So with Thielen being a nice pivot off of David Moore, love this play. 23 points at 4,800. And Freiermuth. So yeah, Freiermuth was, looking like the nuts tight end. Top two lineups had him. This lineup scored 206, 115%. So not quite as contrarian. And yeah, first place really ran away with it, 12 points above second. And then third place, same thing, Russell Wilson. So looking like it's going to be Wilson, Pickens, and Freiermuth is going to be a combination of that. This lineup had Kyron, Bijan, and Bucky. So yeah, Bucky's been in every one of these lineups. Ertz was a good play as well. This one, just Wilson to Freiermuth. Puka snuck in there with 17. Not a lot, not great. Would have wanted a lot more from Puka, but certainly, was enough of a score to get towards the top of the leaderboards. And then Bryce Young, look at this contrarian one. Love it. Playing the other side of this. And by the way, we were talking about this on the pre-lock show. Someone asked about Bryce Young. And what I said is if you're going to play Bryce Young in a large field tournament, absolutely. I like it because he's cheap and I like that game environment. Make sure that you bring it back with like Mike Evans, for example, because if Bryce Young is going off and going to be in the winning build, Tampa is definitely answering. And that's what you have here. You have Bryce Young +2 with two bringbacks, Bucky Irving and Mike Evans. So I like that one. Really good lineup here. Let's take a look at the next one. Same thing. Bryce Young +1, Bucky and Evans bring back. Chase got in here. Was a tough matchup. You needed more from Chase at 8,600. That's why, we weren't really on him. But, decent floor. It's Jamar Chase. That's what it's going to do. And this one had Schultz at tight end and McConkey. So, a lot of chalk pieces. Bijan, Bucky, Mike Evans, Lad McConkey. What got different in a few spots, really, with Bryce Young and Adam Thielen. And that's kind of it. One off of Jamar Chase, but other than that, a lot of chalk and a contrarian stack. So this one had the same stack that won the Millie, the same primary stack, and it had Bucky Irving and Mike Evans. But where it got killed was Tampa Bay D, really, just with 3,603 points, not nearly enough. Hackdog, a couple more we'll take a look at here. Thielen and Tremble. I ended up playing Tremble on the afternoon only slate. Wish I had forced more of him into the main slate because it was the same idea as with David Moore. Why don't you just pay down a little bit at tight end, get Tremble, and then that allows you to pay up more. But this stack obviously, focus on Carolina, and avoided David Moore entirely. So I like that. Had the Evans bring back. And Najee had a good day too. Justin Jefferson killed this lineup. This was a great lineup, honestly. But yeah, two guys, Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, just didn't provide tournament winning value. And then we got Jaden Daniels and McLaurin here. And yeah, not enough flames in any of these players. Parker Washington had a great day. Let's take a look at 10th place. 10th place put in 50 lineups, so a good amount. And it was the same thing, Bryce Young, Leggett, and Thielen. So avoided the David Moore chalk, direct leverage there with that contrarian stack of Young. Brian Robinson Jr., Bucky, Evans, Trey McBride, Saquon. So good lineup, not enough tournament winning value from guys like Saquon. 8,500, 22 wasn't nearly enough. And, 9 points from Xavier Leggett certainly won't do it. Let's see if there's any other names that, like as top DFS pros that we might recognize here. As far as like the overall Billy Maker review, the MME strategy, it was a tough week for the pros. So we're not gonna dive too heavy into it this week because it was a lot of losing. But we're just gonna jump into one guy that I looked at, who I've been looking at a lot this year because he's really had a good year. Now, the fact that I say that, I'm thinking of another guy who's had a good year too. C-Series, yeah, he didn't. He was like a lot of the other pros in that he had a terrible day in MME, and it was a hard day. Like honestly, I've been back testing, and I'm normally able to use the optimizer and hit the winning lineup after tweaking it a little bit with back testing. This slate was very hard because you had it was hard because it was an unconventional. Like you either had to force a lot of Russell Wilson, and I just wasn't going to be on a ton of Russell Wilson. Maybe should have been on more. Maybe Cincinnati does not have the best secondary, and we look at that game total, right? 46. So probably should have been on Russell Wilson a little bit more there. But it's also weird because Pittsburgh has a great defense, so it's normally not the kind of game environment that's going to play to the over like that. Like they typically grind it out. So the Russell Wilson side is not one that I typically would have been on every single slate. Not with their defense, but they need to rethink that, obviously, because would have had to force more Russell Wilson to get to the nuts. And we're going to see, looking at exposures, if you didn't have a lot of Russell Wilson, you probably didn't do very well. And you needed Jaden Daniels, but it was also Jaden Daniels and was expensive, and so was Terry McLaurin. So it was very difficult to, even if you're forcing exposures to them, to get all the right plays. You had to have the right defense too. And slates like that are really difficult when you have an expensive defense and an expensive stack. Like you had to almost have the perfect combination of players to get there or to have consistently high scores. And that just wasn't the case for a lot of these pros, as we're going to see. But Giants quits tops. He's won the Millie Maker this year and consistently scores near the top 100. Not this week, but that's why we're looking at his MME strategy. He's 150 maxer, of course. He had 150 unique, so he's putting in a lot of unique lineups and obviously high expected value as a pro. In his top lineup, Anthony Richardson, Adonai Mitchell, and that's kind of what I mean. Like there were so many like landmines on this slate. Like his top lineup here had a 0 on it. So, Anthony Richardson was a great score, 23 points. So was Mixon. So was Bucky and Evans, as we established. Decent spot for Higgins with, Chase getting a lot of Porter, but still, could not have a score higher than 173. And that's really low for these pros. And honestly, I think my highest score in MME was like 175. So I was pissed. And then I come and look at this and I was like, I guess I didn't do too bad. Let's take a look at his exposures. And then we're going to look at some of the other contests on the slate. So he had Darnold and Richardson as his top guys and Justin Herbert. So right away, like you wanted to be under on Justin Herbert just overall, like in cash and single entry in large field, like he did terrible. So if you faded Herbert, you had a better day. That was his highest exposure. So that's it's not surprising that he lost, basically $1,000 in the Millie Maker. Anthony Richardson obviously was the top guy, but if you're forcing stacks and you're getting a lot of Adonai Mitchell, didn't go well. Darnold got 19 points, so it wasn't great. Some some good fades. The Stroud, the Hurts, Cousins, a lot of these fades, but had the wrong quarterbacks. Really wanted to have Jaden Daniels. In fact, I'm not seeing Jaden. Okay, so 4%. Really wanted to have a lot more Jaden Daniels and Russell Wilson. So yeah, 38% Adonai Mitchell. That is not good. And yeah, that's obviously going to result in a bad day. Noah Brown, you needed McLaurin. And honestly, if you're using it on an optimizer, you had to like boost up McLaurin a lot because at 7,100, him and Jaden, they just didn't project well enough to hit that nut. So, that's how unlikely that Millie Maker lineup in fact was. Pickens was sharp. Higgins, I like the Higgins play. I loved Tank Dell and Nico Collins. Let's see how much he had of Nico. I love them together in just a little under the field there with Stroud stacks, but Stroud has been killing Dell and Collins ceiling this year. He had a bomb that he completely missed. Tank Dell was wide open. He just missed it. He made those last year. He didn't make them this year. It sucks. It is what it is. So nothing really stands out here. He didn't have didn't have a ton of any of the guys that really blew up. You wanted more Mike Evans. Nico had 22 points. Marvin Harrison Jr. posted an okay score. He was under on McConkey, even with the field on Thomas. So really just struggled with the wide receivers in on this slate, minus George Pickens. So he was under on Chase Brown. You definitely did not want to be really far under on him. On Bucky. And the thing is, might have thought he had positive leverage with Bucky, but Bucky ended up being the chalk. So it was probably under there. Mixon had a good day. You wanted more Kyron. Kamara was so, not tournament winning value. So got the Bijan right, had too much Chuba, too much Walker, too much Gus Edwards. So played a small pool of running backs this week and definitely wasn't the ones you wanted to be on. Hawkinson bombs. Ertz was good. Ertz was good. Ingram was okay. Goddard caught a touchdown. He was okay. Wasn't a big tight end day. And 30% New England. So way over the field there. And yeah, it's not surprising that Giant Squid had a bad day. A lot of pros did. New England 4 points. So yeah, a lot of them did. So that's pretty much why we're gonna keep it a short MME part of the show. And let's see what won the flea a little bit. We'll take a look at some of these the afternoon slate. In fact, okay, so the flea was 213. That actually might be higher than the millie. What was the millie? I think I think the millie was 218. So it was pretty close. It was pretty close. So we had Bryce Young and Thielen. So just the +1, which is probably really what you wanted with Young. Of course, you could have done Tremble. That would have been a good score too. But this one also had a Joe Mixon, Nico Collins stack, Bucky Irving, Mike Evans stack. So that is something that we saw a lot. Obviously, Ladd, Fryermuth, and New York Jetsy. So a really good top lineup here. And just a single bullet for easy E86. Second place, and he smoked second place. So this single bullet just absolutely knocked it out of the park. Second place, more Russell Wilson, of course, but had the double tight end, and didn't exactly have the great tight end score that you needed with a double tight end. or at least you would have needed more from Brown and Chase. You could stomach this double tight end, but you would need like a ceiling from like one of these guys. And the same with Pickens. Not the best day for Pickens considering, he had such a great start to that game. But so that's the flea. Let's go ahead and see what won like the $33, 5,300 entries. It's probably going to be quite a bit lower of a score than the 213. Yeah, 190. So, that's why these contests are definitely more fun to target. They're definitely more winnable. We have a Baker, Bucky, Evans stack. I love this stack. And this stack, it's pretty interesting. Baker didn't do a whole lot. He didn't have a great score, but in single entry or, smaller field stuff, a tenth of the size of the flea, for example, the Bucky to Baker to Bucky to Evans stack was enough because Bucky had 30, right? So love these contests because you don't need the perfect lineup. Chase Brown 19 was definitely enough at his salary at 6,200, and just under 4x. Nico Collins and Brian Thomas and Mark Andrews and Adam Thielen. So direct leverage off of that David Moore chalk. Nailed the tight end, 3,900. And I like the tight end in that game because, it was going to be a tough matchup for the cornerbacks, for the wide receivers because of the cornerbacks. So it's like, why don't we just play Mark Andrews, who obviously, projects quite a bit better than the wide receivers, when we factor in fantasy points per dollar in that high scoring game. So I like that. But yeah, that's pretty good lineup. We had the Baker +2 with the running back. And obviously an Adam Thielen run back. A very chalky lineup, but it certainly wasn't duplicated. So sometimes I think that's something we need to think about too when we look at these. Like your lineup could have a lot of ownership, but how do you get different, right? And stacking Baker with Bucky and doing a Mike Evans, Baker +2 with Bucky being one of the stacking partners, and then you do an Adam Thielen bring back who's going to be low owned. That right there, that combination is going to be unique. So you can eat the Chase chalk, you can eat, the Nico Collins chalk, the Brian Thomas chalk, because that combination is how your lineup got different. So sometimes when you're hand building, I think it's best to kind of think through that. And you could still have a very chalky lineup with a lot of good plays that's unique and different wins. And I think, we'll kind of end it there. Thank you for joining me. Really appreciate it. I'm not sure if we still have a Black Friday special going. I haven't been told that we've ended it. So if you want to get access to all DFS Army's tools, the domination station, which we use to build lineups each and every week, this shows, our projections, ownership, and you can set rules like stacking and, really helps a lot of DFS Army VIPs make it to the top of the leaderboards. If you want access to that, as well as a cheat sheet, our chalkboard that shows ownership for players, the Discord community and everything else, make sure to use code BF 2024 for 50% off your first month. That gives you access to everything. So they haven't told me that code isn't working anymore, so I'm assuming it's still going. So get into that while you can. I'll put the link in the video description. And of course, we will see you on another week in review next week. Take care, everyone.